Greetings. What's up? It's Deborah. Happy Saturday to you. If you're here in the U.S., you probably are aware it's the 4th of July, and so a lot of people are celebrating a holiday. I'm not a person who celebrates any holidays, so for me it's another day, but I'm sure that, and I'm hoping that whatever you do, whether you celebrate or not, that you're enjoying your weekend and your time with your loved ones in whatever way you choose to spend it. So I want to just quickly answer a question. Hi, Hassan. That was asked early. Hey, Esther. That was asked of me, and I was waiting for this question, and I'm so glad that it was asked because it's a really powerful question. I put up a comment or a quote a couple days ago where I said that people aren't toxic, only their interactions and their behaviors are. Hey, Nikki, it's good to see you. And so when people put up when they have these different questions, I really like them because they help us to really go deeper into the topic. So I really love this question. When I used to work with women who were in emotionally toxic marriages and relationships, I used to get this kind of question all of the time, which is, well, what if someone's a rapist? What if someone's a serial killer? What if someone's a child molester? Are you saying that they're not toxic to the people who they are perpetrating these acts of violence against? And so I want to answer this very carefully. Now, I am not a psychologist. I have not studied into criminal behaviors and criminal mindsets. I have no study in there. But I'm saying this from a more of a universal principle approach, okay? Which is not studying into some of the weird specificities of what people's issues are. There's all kinds of issues out there. But more specifically, focusing our attention on how we can see the big picture, how we can zoom out and see how this can be universally applied. So, first of all, I want to say that if you've ever been the victim of any violence, right? You know how it feels. It feels awful to feel like a victim, to feel powerless, to feel like you've been violated and there's nothing you can do. There's a reason for that, first of all. It's because we as human beings are not actually powerless. We're extremely powerful. So anytime we feel like we're not in power, it's so out of alignment with our true nature that it really bothers us, right? So we're not going to use victim and perpetrator in this discussion, even though it's often used and you know what we're talking about. But most specifically, yes, those acts of violence, things that are done to harm others or to hurt others, are absolutely toxic. But what about the person? Is the person toxic? My answer to you is no. Let me tell you why. We as human beings are limitless. We are extremely powerful. We, however, are limited by our conditioning. We are limited by the rules of society around us, by the way that we were influenced as children, whatever that might be, because as children we absorb and we are naturally by nature dependent as children. There's no way to avoid that. So we are going to absorb and become, a lot of what we become is going to be influenced by our influences when we were children and growing up and the things that we experienced. In addition to that, however, human beings are capable of shifting behaviors. They're capable of shifting thought patterns. We have that malleability. Is it easy to do? No. Does it take effort? Yes. But it is doable. So what happens? I want you to look at the flip side of what happens when we label people in a way that isn't very flattering. What happens? If we call someone toxic, what do they end up usually displaying? More toxicity. I use the example of being a klutz. It's so true. My parents, I don't know who started it, but somebody thought that I was a klutz. And sure enough, I went through life always tripping, falling over things, and then I married someone who was very organized, and he too called me a klutz, But I noticed something. I noticed that when I was around him, because he had this order about things that he did, I started to be more organized. I started to be less klutzy. I started to have less spills and be more careful. And it was him rubbing off on me, but it was also me kind of taking on a different identity. Okay? So let's come back to the idea of negative labels, labels that are really actually detrimental. Klutz, not such a big a deal, right? But what if I want you to think about your child. When that child was a baby, or when they were a toddler, and when they were maybe throwing a tantrum and they threw something, I remember one time my daughter was upset and she dropped the dish and it broke on the floor. What in that moment do we call them? Do we say that they're bad? Do we say that they're evil? Do we say that they're destructive? Do we say that they need punishment? What do we tell our kids? Most of us can do what most parents want to do, is to separate the character of the child from their behavior. I love you. You're a beautiful person. I just don't like that you decided to throw the dish on the floor. That's not okay, right? Somehow along the line, we start to think, we're conditioned to believe that as adults, we're any different from children. We're not. Just like the child is doing the best they can with whatever data they have at that time, the adult is doing the best they can with whatever data they have at the time. So when we label people as toxic, we start to limit the possibilities of them being anything but, because unfortunately, because we're all connected, which everyone never I've been spinning this record over on repeat the past couple of weeks. There are no boundaries between human and human. We are connected. I feel something from you and I respond a certain way, and I don't even know why I'm responding that way. It just happens because of what I felt and I detected from you. We are constantly having this nonverbal communication that's going on between human beings. So the child picks up when you call that child evil or the devil or selfish, okay? And I have a story for you about that. I'll tell you in just a minute. That child picks up on it, and before long, they're demonstrating and they're displaying those very traits that you've labeled them as. So if you live with somebody and you're in conflict, my recommendation is don't start calling them toxic. Don't start thinking they're toxic, because then you're just going to increase more of the behavior that you don't want to see, okay? Coming back to the serial killers, molesters, rapists, and those kinds of situations, I really encourage not even using those names that I just used. Instead of identifying a person as their behavior, saying this person perpetrated this act. Now, does that mean that you should hang out with this person, that you should become besties with this person, that you should just, because they're not their behavior, hang around with them if you don't approve of or like or enjoy their behavior? Absolutely not. Get out of Dodge, man. Don't stick around. I'm just simply saying, give them the gift that is really a human right. Unfortunately, it's become a gift, but it's the human right of every single one of us on this planet to choose our own destiny, to be our own, to define who we become. Give us that chance. It doesn't mean that we're victims now in the sense that, because someone labeled me as a serial killer, I now have to go kill people. No, I'm not saying do that. I'm not saying that either. But what I'm saying is that we have the opportunity with our labels, with what we call, how we describe people and how we think about people, to effect transformation. Okay, so now I'm going to give you my personal example. Our words have power. Yes, they do. My personal example, and I'm going to do my best not to cry, because every time I tell this story, I cry. So I was labeled as stubborn and hard-headed and difficult. I don't know where it started. I assume at some point one of my parents bought into it, and then it just kind of built momentum. So I was always acting out the stubborn and difficult child, always. Now I know that was just my rebel face, but back then I didn't know that. So as I was in college, I was still acting this out. And I remember one of my classmates, I will never forget him. Till the day I die, I will never forget him. And I remember one time I was acting out my difficult, and he tried to, kind of like be really nice and like overcome it. And I was like, no, I was just going to be difficult. And then he said, then after a while, I kind of felt bad because he was being so nice. And I said, I came back to him. And he was like, oh, so you want to be nice now? But the way he said it, his facial expression, I will never forget it, because it was like he knew I was playing a role. Whew. It's like he understood that I was more than the role I was playing, that wasn't really me. It was like he was the only person who got that it was a game. And it was the first time that I got an out. Like, I don't have to play this role. I don't have to be difficult. I can be something else. The second person who did this for me was somebody who I worked with. I worked with him for a couple of years, and he became almost like a big brother to me. I had a boss, I had two bosses actually, and both in a row in that job, who were, let's just say that they didn't appreciate the disruptor in me, and they were always trying to keep me in line. And of course that didn't work out so well. And so he would, I remember one time we both, I will never forget this. These are stories that I like remember and I hold on to for bad days to remember who I really am. We both had on the same color shirt and jeans. It just was a random coincidence. And I wanted to go to the bathroom, which was like all the way down across the hallway in the office. But I didn't want my boss to see me because he was such a control freak. I mean, this guy was like, it was crazy. And I knew that he was going to be upset at me for something. I don't even remember what it was now. And you know what he did? He said, this is my coworker, he said, come on, I'll go in front of you, and because we're wearing the same colored clothes, he won't even notice that you're behind me. And we literally walked down the hall, and I was behind him, and he was walking in front of me so that my boss wouldn't see me. Of course, he saw me on the way back from the bathroom, but I will never forget that story, because this was how much warmth and understanding this coworker had for me. And again, over and over, day in and day out, I credit him for like the first part of my awakening. Before I got to personal development, I just needed somebody to believe in me. I just needed somebody to see me as more than the labels that I had been assigned. And those two people did. And because they saw me as more than the labels that I was assigned, I was able to start to redefine myself. So even though I haven't kept in touch with those guys, they absolutely were agents of transformation in my life. And you have the ability, you have the opportunity, you have the gift to be an agent of transformation in someone else's life. There's someone out there who's thought of as evil or bad or selfish or mean or toxic, or a narcissist who wants out, who wants to break free of that label and does not know how. And when you show up and you give them that freedom, you remember that they are bigger than their behavior. When you remember that they are bigger than whatever thing they've ever done or whatever label anyone could ever give them, you remind them of that. Okay, so when I'm speaking, when I'm sharing these truths, it's not because I'm just trying to, instigate drama, and it's not because I'm trying to shock anybody. It's just because this is real. Okay, this is what humanity needs to be about more, instead of all the nonsense that we spend way too much of our energy looping. Like, what would happen if everyone dropped labels and just saw that each of us had limitless potential? And just said, okay, I didn't like that behavior, but that's not who that person is. What would the world be like? If you're courageous, put your answer in the comments. What would the world be like if we dropped the labels? So, you can see how passionate I am about these topics. I'm so glad that someone asked the question and that I had the honor to give my response. Now, what's your response? The next time someone hurts you or does something hurtful to anyone, can you separate the person from their behavior? If you can do it for your kids, you can do it for them. All right, so that's it for me today. If you like this content, please hit the like button. If you know someone who can benefit from it, please share it. And if you want to be a part of our community and learn the full 9 steps, this is just a little scratch of 2 steps of it that I talked about today, of going from uncertain to absolutely certain as a leader, as a purpose-driven leader, and as a maverick, then go ahead and click on the link above in the description and join our free community, because that's where the action is, that's where the training is, that's where the inspiration is, and that's where the community is. All right, much love. Bye.